Hearing impaired or lip-reading people, how have corona mask policies affected your daily life? As someone who cannot control their voice loudness well, I apologize. It's hard to explain, but I feel like trying to go a little louder is taxing on my diaphragm and ends up as a shout. It's like that setting doesn't work, not sure if it's asthma related or my vocal cords just doesn't work with that amount of air. As a sales associate in a mask, this has been difficult. I went 3 days without a sale in a thick cloth mask, but when I switched to a medical one I immediately went back to regular sales because I spend less time shouting to be heard through the mask. One thing you can try is dropping the register rather than raising your volume. Most hearing loss tends to lose higher registers first, and we're evolutionarily geared to listen to hear deeper registers, which is why if you deepen your voice, children, and dogs, too, actually, will suddenly pay closer attention. It's just also easier for someone with high register loss to hear you and understand what you're saying. Huh, that's really interesting. I don't have hearing loss but sensory processing disorder and I have a harder time understanding men/lower voices. Maybe that's part of the reason why I got a lot of complaints about people not being able to hear me when I worked in retail. I have a naturally soft voice but it's also instinctive for me to speak higher rather than lower in an interacting with customers setting, because that's what helps me. I wear hearing aids and even then sometimes it's hard to get people. But I'll usually say that I wear them and they will make an effort to speak up or speak more clearly. What success is hearing aids, masks, and glasses day? My ears are like WTF bruh? Or the damn string gets twisted in my hearing aid and when I pull the mask off it'll take that hearing aid with it. Then I'm like oh fuck these things are not cheap at all. Edit, thank you for your suggestions and advice. Since it's getting colder I'm gonna probably go for a scarf mask. There's a few folks that offered to make something specialized or the ear savers and just reminds me that we're not so different and still know how to show some love to one another. If anyone would like to offer to make some for anyone who might need one I'm happy to help contribute towards materials costs. Let me know if you want to do it and I'll add your name here later. My mom eventually convinced my dad to get hearing aids and he absolutely loves them now. He actually hears everything and doesn't have to just pretend to have heard you. He even got ones that have Bluetooth so he can connect them to his phone or the TV. It's kinda strange, but I think the technology of them helped convince him they were cool. He did point out, however, that during the first few weeks he was going nuts with all the noises he wasn't used to hearing, clocks ticking, their dog's nails on the hardwood floor, birds outside, the house creaking, etc. Everyone that I've ever met with new hearing aids has this issue with their newfound background noise. Yeah, and I have the added fun of having sensory issues, so anytime I wore my aids, I would have a headache within 5 minutes, and if anyone ate or chewed gum near me while I was wearing them, I'd actually start to feel sick. After about 2 months I stopped wearing them because the constant headaches and the nausea in restaurants just wasn't worth being able to hear all the background noise that I didn't really care for. I have the same situation with my mom. She says she doesn't want one cause it will make her feel/look old, SMH. You know, cause asking someone to repeat what they said a bunch of times doesn't make you look old. It is incredibly frustrating. Edit thanks for the responses. I wish I could convince her. She's been to the doctor and knows it's impaired but won't do anything to try to fix it. Trying to get her to an audiologist is futile. I've been thinking of just getting a cheap one to try but don't want to give her a bad experience and scare her off even more. Everyone on my dad's side has terrible hearing. My grandpa lived to 94, was basically deaf and still refused them until he passed away. My grandma is almost 90 and didn't get them until after my grandpa passed and she was lonely. Now my dad's hearing is really bad and getting worse, and he refuses to even listen to us talk about hearing aids. It's very frustrating to get halfway through a conversation before he even realizes you were talking to him. I just got hearing aids about 6 weeks ago. I work in retail, in a store with music. Since my brain is still getting used to hearing all the things now, it's even harder than before to understand people. And I also wear glasses skeptical but I just special ordered some cloth masks with longer ear loops so I can comfortably use an ear saver, so hopefully that'll help. We're not supposed to use tie-back masks at work. ETA, my employer doesn't disallow tiebacks, they just encourage us not to use them for safety reasons, like the possibility of getting caught on stuff or whatever. Realistically the likelihood of that happening is extremely small but it's better to find ways to reduce risk wherever possible. But employees have worn them without issue, wearing a mask at all is better than no mask. And I'm a hot mess express so I'd be the one who would get seriously injured from something dumb and avoidable happening if I chose to wear tiebacks anyways, so that's why I found a workaround: smile. Depending on what type you have, You might be able to get them programmed differently depending on environment. I have 1. Normal, one-on-one conversations in office environment. 2. Listening to music in my car. 3. Loud environments like busy restaurants. I have the Kirkland brand and actually have an app on my phone where I can control where I want the microphone to focus sound on. The first few months of having hearing aids was definitely brain overload. Edited to add. Thank you all so much for offering to contribute. I could never accept it though. If you really want to help and are in the US, write every politician you can think of to convince them to start requiring insurance companies to cover hearing aids, and orthodontics, or contribute to your local deaf foundation. I am not the only one in this position. It's been very difficult. I am extremely hard of hearing and read lips. I didn't lose my hearing until I was a teenager, so my speech is completely understandable, but I never learned sign language other than the alphabet. Even with a mask I can normally tell when someone is trying to talk to me, so the first thing I say is I am deaf and read lips. I cannot understand you with the mask on. This usually means they stop trying to communicate with me altogether, but I also carry a small notebook and pen at all times in case someone needs to have an actual conversation with me. It makes for a pretty lonely life right now and has made me rethink not spending the money on hearing aids. Right now, I am having to choose between braces for my 14-year-old or hearing aids for me. She's always going to win that debate. I work with a 92-year-old woman who is your problem. That means I have to get my phone out whenever I want to talk to her and make a note. Maybe you tell people to write down what they want to say and show you the phone. That way they don't have to touch the pen and the book. Plus they maybe like to communicate even more, because for younger people writing on the phone is easier. I don't mean to steal this post but to follow on from it. As a non-hearing impaired/speech impaired person, how can I help make it better for you when I do come into contact with you whilst I wear a mask? I work in retail, so I have a habit of writing things when I encounter this scenario, but I don't know if that offends people. Is there another way I can make it easier? I don't really want to touch your phone or have you touch mine in general, regardless of a pandemic. Writing is usually the go-to and the easiest option for those who are hard of hearing or deaf. Although some don't have the best English, this is a thing. They fall short on English because the grammar is different from sign language, if they use that, but basic sentences used in a retail setting should be fine. You can ask if they know sign language and learn some basic signs like please, thank you, have a nice day, do you need help? If you're in the States or Canada, look up Bill Vickers on YouTube. He's fantastic. Always remember to face them and make eye contact when you talk. We tend to forget they can't see us when we turn around because we're used to people being able to hear. Always look at them and make sure they can see your lips. If you're yawning or covering your face, then the words get lost. Have patience and be kind. They'll do the same. There's also voice to text on most phones, so if you need to say something you can show them. And then you're not sharing pen or paper. They can text back on their phone or write. It's a nightmare. I was barely able to deal with many situations before. People who speak softly and very fast, young women who typically have high-pitched voices, etc. But now, with people wearing masks, I can only guess at what they are saying. I hear maybe one word out of 4 and have to kind of extrapolate. I am sure that I have been asked direct questions and replied either with a nonsense answer or the wrong yes/no. In the case where getting and receiving information is critical, I ask the person to write it down. Sometimes when I go into the pharmacy or hardware store or another shop, I will either bring an empty container of the thing I need or have a photo of a thing set up on my phone. This avoids the need for some conversation. It's really kind of like being at the amusement park in one of those electric bumper cars that you can't control. I have moderate hearing loss. I just started a new job a few weeks ago. It's been very difficult learning everyone's names, much less hearing my trainer explain things. I'm used to having people repeat things for me, but it's mentally hard having them repeat something as simple as their name. Maybe that's a silly thing. Names are important. I feel bad when I mishear and call someone by the wrong name. And it doesn't help that I am not a name person anyway. I'm a face person. I know people by their faces. I don't know what any of my coworkers look like. It struck me today when I showed one a picture of me and my family and they exclaimed, "Is that what you really look like?" And then they stared between me and the picture of me back and forth for a few awkward moments. I'm glad I don't work with the public. I'd never be able to communicate effectively with so many strangers. Masks make interaction so much more difficult. At my last job I taught my coworkers some basic sign language. That helped, especially at a distance, when noise doesn't travel well. I'm in Struggle Town. I was born hard of hearing, but fortunately for me my hearing loss has stayed consistent for 29 years. Unfortunately for me, I have a number of health issues that require me to attend the hospital a lot. My partner has been coming with me to all my appointments and pretty much repeating everything they say directly into my good ear. I had to go into the ED for a broken foot where my partner wasn't allowed in. I explained that I'm hard of hearing, so they offered to get me an interpreter. I explained that I'm not an Auslan user, so it won't be useful for me. Due to my anxiety, I explained my situation to the nurse, and so she sat next to me and waited with me until I spoke to the doctors and they wheeled me in for scans, etc. She also took her mask off and sat at a distance to keep me company. I try and avoid going out in public as much as I can frown. It's not too bad, because most people are willing to take their masks off to help. Especially in the NHS, they took their masks off immediately, but where people were concerned, then they whipped out the pen and paper. When I went to an electrical store, the staff member there just used notes on his mobile phone to communicate to me. The only major negative experience I've had so far is from a McDonald's worker, believe it or not, who just figured repeating what she said would make me suddenly be able to hear her. A customer basically stepped in and helped me out, but really, she could have at least tried. She didn't put any effort into trying to communicate, etc. I'm quite happy with how accommodating the majority of people have been. I try to carry paper around now, so if people want to keep their masks on, then that's even better. I'm all masked up myself tbh, so I'd rather they keep it on, but I won't complain about them trying to be accessible. I've actually had more issue from lockdown when companies took online chat and support services offline and migrated to phone only. That was a fucking ball ache. Seeing stuff like the government wanting people to phone ahead for accident and emergency doesn't help either. It's impossible.